Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me in my daily devotion. I'm back. It's been quite a few days. My daughter is okay. Thank you very much for your prayers. Of course, I need more prayers because right immediately when we left the hospital, now it's my mother-in-law's turn, no? The mom of Honey. Please pray for Mamang. She's right now in the hospital. We just ask God that she'll be delivered from her sepsis, and it's a uphill climb, but we believe God, and God is in control over our lives. Friends, this morning I would like to share with you the very first of a series of passages starting from Palm Sunday as we celebrate the Holy Week. It's I think one more week before the Holy Week, and let's just study a lot of the important events that happened during that most important and critical period in the life and ministry of our Lord Jesus. This morning, let's go to Luke chapter 19, verse 28, and may I read. After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethphage and Bethany at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' say, 'The Lord needs it.'" Those who were sent ahead went and found just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." Friends, let's try to paint the picture of what's happening here. Now, we know that for 3 years, Jesus has done his ministry. Signs and wonders accompanied him. You know, the lepers were healed, the blind can see, the lame can walk. Amazing, great stories of people being fed, 5,000 people being fed, and sermons of incredible significance were shared by Jesus on his 3 years of ministry. We are here on that final week where Jesus is like the culmination of his ministry, where he's going up to Jerusalem, the center of religion, the center of Israel that time. Now, try to picture what's happening here in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is under the oppression and rule of Rome. In fact, a lot of people who were following Jesus already are thinking, is he the promised one? There's always been stories of a deliverer, a Messiah that would deliver Israel from Roman oppression. There were a lot of people that also tried to go against Rome, but they failed. And they were always thinking, many years have happened, that they were still looking for that deliverer, that chosen one, that Messiah that will lead them to freedom against their oppressor. Now, this is the stage that was set right when Jesus went up to Jerusalem. People were waiting for him, yes. And then we could also know that Jesus was walking into, going through that mountain, the Mount of Jerusalem. He passed through a place called the Mount of Olives. Now, if you know about Mount Olives, it's a very significant place. Christians know that this is also the place where, aside from, of course, Jesus getting the donkey, where a colt would bring him to Jerusalem, this is also a place where he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane on that fateful night before his crucifixion. We know this is a very significant place for Christians. We also know this is a very significant place for Jews. Why? Because the Mount of Olives is a mountain ridge located east of Jerusalem's old city. It is separated by the Kidron Valley. Now, it's known as a Mount of Olives because it's lined up by a lot of olive groves. And it has 3 peaks, Mount Scopus in the north, Mount Olives proper, which is the center, and the Mount of Corruption in the south. This is an ancient burial site. Okay, take note. Among the Jews, this is an ancient burial site. In fact, they say there are about 150,000 people, Jews, that are buried there because it is a very significant place where they believe the resurrection of the dead will begin once the time of the Messiah has arrived. In fact, prophets like Zechariah and Haggai are said to be buried there. Take note, Zechariah, remember this guy, he's a prophet, and he's said to be buried there. It's a site also of King David's escape from his son Absalom. Now, we know that Jesus is right there in the Mount of Olives, and then he called for his two disciples and asked them to get a colt, a donkey. A donkey. Now, this donkey, it says, no one should have ridden it, untie it and bring it here. Of course, it's kind of strange because there's an owner, and then all the disciples have to say is, the Lord needs it. Can you imagine if you're the owner and then suddenly someone will try to steal your property, and then the guy will say, no, the Lord needs this. But that's exactly what happened. The owner released and gave that donkey to the disciples. We know that Jesus said it first and then it happened. Can you imagine that? Jesus sees the future. Jesus sees, of course, God knows our future. God knows what will happen even before it happens. Now, we know exactly that Jesus himself felt a little bit unsure when he went, because he knows if the future shows that there will be a great celebration waiting for him, he also knows that a great tribulation is also waiting for him. But at this point, there is great expectation, especially among the people, when Jesus will arrive. In verse 35, can you imagine this? Jesus sat on the colt. No, before he sat on the colt, his disciples first brought the colt to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. Wow. You know the imagery of people like the disciples putting their cloak. The cloak is very important here because cloaks represent property. It represents your valuable. Of course, there are expensive cloaks and there are not so expensive cloaks. But this situation, the disciples threw their cloaks. It's a symbol of submission. It's a symbol of honoring someone, especially someone highly esteemed like the king. Like the king. In fact, as Jesus started moving along the path, it says, as he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. Wow! This symbol of honoring and revering someone of great value, of great significance, people started putting their cloaks on the road. Can you imagine that? As a road full of cloaks and people lining up just to watch Jesus. Wow! I wish I could be there to witness this incredible moment. You know, in 2 Kings chapter 9 verse 13, it says, when King Jehu was anointed king of Israel, his officers hastily spread their cloaks at his feet, acknowledging him as the ruler. Friends, this is very symbolic. It's a symbol of submission. It's a symbol of reverence. It's a symbol of respect and recognition of the authority of the person that is given their cloaks to. And here you can see all the people lining up, throwing their cloaks. This is probably their valued possession, and yet they give it and lay it down at Jesus' feet. Friends, right now, if we were there, are you going to be one of those people that will lay down your precious cloak, your precious possession at Jesus' feet? Now let's continue. In Zechariah, remember I told you that prophet Zechariah was buried in the Mount of Olives? Don't you know that Zechariah has a wonderful verse? The book Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9 says, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, but lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Friends, this is very important because we know that kings normally don't ride donkeys. Normally, kings ride the biggest and the most powerful horse in the kingdom. And yet, here Zechariah prophesies many centuries ago that the king of Israel will come in a lowly donkey on a colt. The colt is like a baby donkey, the foal of a donkey. This is a fulfilled promise. When Jesus did this, he purposely did this to fulfill the prophecy of Zechariah. Can you imagine if you were Zechariah in heaven, and then there you are, your body is buried in the Mount of Olives, and then suddenly Jesus would pass by, fulfilling the prophecy that you made? Wow, I could probably say, hey, I said that, Lord. You used me, I was listening, and then I said that. That's an amazing story. Now, in verse 37, it says, when he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully praising God. It's like a spontaneous uproar. It's like a mob, but the opposite of mob. Because people, instead of just shouting, like down with the government, they're shouting, Hosanna! Blessed be the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. It was a time of great celebration. It was a time of great victory. When Jesus started walking up the steps into Jerusalem, it was like a procession of praise. Wow. Can you imagine the people just immediately just went up together with one voice crying out, Hosanna, Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. You know, this verse comes from Psalm chapter 118. And normally a lot of people attribute this verse to the coming Messiah as well. So you know the mindset. The mindset is they are anticipating that Jesus will be declared King when he comes into Jerusalem. Friends, there was great anticipation for the coming Messiah. And of course, a great celebration was coming. And it was witnessed by thousands and thousands of people as they marched up into the streets of Jerusalem. Now, look at this in verse 39. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Remember the Pharisees? These are the religious leaders of their time. They are entrusted with reading and studying the law and interpreting the law and, of course, putting laws within the laws. And they're the ones that will enforce the law. Sometimes they will punish people for violating the law. And here, probably they don't like the sound of it that, you know, they're declaring this man, Jesus, as the Messiah. And then suddenly they felt defensive and said, Teacher, tell these people to keep quiet. To keep quiet. And Jesus said in verse 40, it says, I tell you, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. Friends, the stage is set. The stage is set. In the next few hours, you will see the incredible events that will happen that will culminate into, of course, the death, crucifixion, and ultimate resurrection of Jesus. The players are introduced. Jesus is there. The disciples are there. Of course, the Pharisees are there. The people and the crowd are there. And we will witness amazing stories that we can learn on the next few days. From now until Easter Sunday, we will talk about the important events that happened when Jesus entered Jerusalem. Friends, before that, I would like to close in verse 41. Look at what he said. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. Jesus wept over it. Remember, he saw the future. He saw not only for himself the suffering that he will have, but he also saw what will happen to this great city. The city that he loves so much, Jerusalem. He knows that in a few years, he says, if even you had only known on this day what would bring you peace. Jesus is saying, like, if you only knew that the way to peace is through me. What would bring you peace, now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you, and when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side, they will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone unturned, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. Friends, Jesus wept. Jesus wept for the city because he knows the future. And he knew that the city will eventually be destroyed. The great temple that Jesus was about to come up to, that second temple, was going to be destroyed in a couple of years. Like Jesus died and was resurrected in AD 30, the temple was destroyed in AD 70 by the great general Titus. So what he said really came true, that there will be great tribulation and great difficulty in the time of Israel. Friends, we know there are a lot of things that we can learn here. Remember, number one, about the cloak. Right now, try to think about what you can give to the Lord. What valuable thing can you offer to the Lord this morning? You know, cloaks are just symbols, but it can be your time, it can be your resources, it can be your money to give to the ministry. Whatever it is that is in your heart that is valuable to you, let us give to the Lord. And of course, with regards to that prayer of Jesus about the missed opportunity that Israel had, my prayer is that we will not miss the opportunities that will come our way. It could be a time that can bring us blessing, prosperity, because of our faithfulness to God. My prayer is that we will not miss those opportunities to reach out to people, that we can encourage them and, make their lives just a little less difficult. I pray that we would truly, right now in our time, that we can be a blessing just the way those people who gave so much to Jesus, sacrificed so much to Jesus, they will not also miss their opportunities for salvation. Friends, thank you so much for joining me. This is Bible Biker. Indeed, I want you to be excited for the next few days as we discuss the Holy Week. Thank you very much for joining me. See you again tomorrow. Bye.